It's 2017, and a husband and father and musician was driving near Sequim. We'll call him John Smith. As he's coming around a bend, here comes a work truck. The work truck doesn't turn. It hits John Smith head on. That husband and father was killed in that accident. It turns out the truck driver was drunk. Really drunk, 3 times the legal limit of alcohol in his system. And it wasn't the first time he'd been drunk on the job. Did the company he was driving for stand up and take any responsibility? Far from it. In our everyday lives, we might hear about these stories on the evening news. Maybe it's a headline in the local paper or a red line of traffic on your way to work. But to the individuals involved, to their loved ones, and to those fighting on their behalf, each and every one of these stories represents some of the most devastating and challenging times in their lives. We share their stories with you. We examine real-life cases of loss, the legal battles that follow, and we talk about recovery too. What does justice look like? This is the True Claims Podcast. I'm Eric Johnson. This is Chris Davis, founder of the Davis Law Group. This case, I have to tell you, Chris, as I was learning about it, is infuriating, right? It's maddening.
Yeah, it was pretty egregious, pretty bad conduct by the driver. And after getting into the case further, finding out that the company either knew about this driver and his alcohol problem or should have done something to make sure that he didn't do this thing again.
3 times the legal limit is a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
I heard that there was empty and partially consumed bottles, that this guy came to work drunk and then stopped and bought more alcohol. They found bottles in his truck. I mean, this wasn't just a guy having a couple of beers. This was full-on drunkenness.
Yeah, I mean, more than 3 times the legal limit shows you how much you have to, to get to that level, you have to consume 15, 20 drinks within a 5-6 hour period, if not shorter. And it also told me that this person likely had an ongoing drinking problem for a while. And so one of the first questions I had, if he could blow that high, was he drinking on the job? Had he been disciplined by his employer for drinking? These were all questions that I wanted to know to see if the company should have done more to prevent this from happening.
And what did you find out?
We found out that, yes, the company was aware that he had a drinking problem, that he had been sober for a period of time, but they still gave him a company truck. They didn't monitor his driving. Had they monitored his driving, they would have found empty liquor and beer cans in his company truck, which would have put them on notice, hey, you're drinking and driving, right? And would have taken his truck away. So, yeah, we found out that the company did know and should have done more to prevent this guy either from working for them or driving a company vehicle where he could put others at risk.
Complicating matters for you is the fact that this company owns other companies and he's driving a truck from a subsidiary that is underneath the umbrella of the parent company. All of these things are complications.
Yeah, primarily because it impacted insurance coverage. So the LLCs, the subsidiary LLCs had much lower coverage than what the parent company had access to. And so there was kind of a shell game that was going on by the parent company, and that's why they created the LLCs in the first place, is to try to limit their exposure as much as possible. So one of the things I tried to do was to pierce that veil, so to speak, and hold the parent company responsible, just as responsible as the LLC that the guy was operating under.
And you have to wonder, certainly if a guy is that drunk on the job, somebody must see him, must have an idea that this guy is an alcoholic, that he has issues, and yet he continues driving. There had been the past DUI arrest. Somebody certainly should have flagged that. Somebody should have done some research to find out if this guy had gone through rehab and all of those things. I'm guessing you touched on all of that.
Oh, yeah. We it was a scorched earth practice against this company. And unfortunately, I took depositions of some of his coworkers and supervisors, and none of them would admit to me that they knew he had a drinking problem. And the records were kind of sparse on in his employment file as well. I mean, the company was smart. They knew what they were doing. And I believe that they likely told the employees that were still working for them to not say anything. You know, it's kind of the hidden message. You say something, there's going to be more at risk for you personally if you help this guy.
To the layman, this case seems like an open and shut, right? I mean, he's obviously drunk. He has supervisors. He was allowed to get into this company vehicle drunk and kill a man. But the defense took an interesting tact, didn't they? They admitted they were wrong.
Yeah. A couple of months before the trial date, they formally admitted that their employee was at fault, 100% at fault, and that the companies, were also responsible for him because he was an employee and driving a company vehicle. And they did that for strategic reasons.
How did that impact the case? Once they've laid that out there, now it's your move, right?
Yeah. Well, this is a common defense tactic, especially in cases that has egregious facts in it. And that tactic is for the defense to admit responsibility for causing the accident and then file a motion with the judge to ask the judge to keep out all of the bad facts against them that are involved in the accident, essentially to sanitize my case so the jury doesn't get to hear at all that the guy was drunk or that he had a drinking problem or that he had empty alcohol bottles in his truck. That was the motion that they had filed, and that was the pending motion that was hanging over my client's head when we finally settled the case.
So this goes on for how long? How long from the time it happened to when it was set to go to trial?
I want to say 2 or 3 years.
So this is going on for a long time.
Yeah, maybe almost 3 years.
And by taking that defense, by the company saying, yeah, we're at fault, but we don't want to admit any of the dirty little details, does that change? Had you accepted that, what do you think the payout would have been at the end?
Well, it wasn't a matter of me accepting it. It was a matter of a risk that a judge would grant that motion. And if a judge had granted that motion, it would have significantly lowered the value of the case, in my opinion. Because the real value is getting the jury to hear how bad this accident was and why the company knew about it and should have done more to prevent it, right? So had the judge taken all that evidence out, it would have reduced the value by many millions, in my opinion. So the defense was smart in that they filed this motion before we agreed to do mediation, and then we did engage in mediation the day before the court hearing, the day before the judge was to decide that motion.
So you're going forward. It's sort of a game of chicken, isn't it,
yeah,
Chris? I mean, you're going forward. We're ready to go to trial. Yeah. And they're saying, we're ready to go to trial. Bring it on. Mm-hmm. At some point, someone has to blink. And what happened in this case?
So the mediation lasted all day, and I think we got a final offer of like $4 million when we ended. And there was no way I advised my client, there's no way you should accept that. Well, after the mediation ended, the parties still continued to talk with the mediator until late into the evening, until almost midnight that day.
Wow.
And so I was.
So you're pushing right up against the deadline.
Yeah, and there was risk to my clients. You know, they could have, had the judge granted that motion, the jury could have awarded well less than $5 million for the case, given the other facts in the case. But at the same time, if the judge denied that motion, then I felt the case was worth well into the $10 million plus range. So there was risk on both sides. And, you know, it's true. It's a game of chicken. It's like who's going to blink first, who's going to, you know, be the rational one. And when they got up to $8 million, I had to tell the client, I would not gamble with, you're gambling with $8 million on the table. And if the judge grants their motion, the value of the case could be less than half of that. Wow. So it was a very stressful day, and so they, in the end, agreed and accepted the final offer of $8 million.
Came so close to going to trial.
Yeah.
What happened to the driver, the guy, the drunk driver?
Yeah, he was prosecuted criminally. I think he pled guilty to vehicular homicide, and he was sentenced, I think, to like 8, 10, 12 years in prison.
Wow.
At least. So, in fact, when I took his deposition, I had to go to the penitentiary in the peninsula of, I forget the name of the penitentiary, but it's all on the very tip of the peninsula.
Oh, wow. Where he was.
Yeah, and so I had to go to the penitentiary twice, actually, to take his deposition. And that's kind of an experience, having to go through there and seeing all of the prisoners and their loss of freedoms and the jail cells.
Was he remorseful?
He was. Yeah. I mean, he was incredibly sorry. And on one hand, I felt bad for the guy because he ruined his entire life by a bad choice.
Yeah.
And but he's serving his time.
How about the wife and children of the man who was killed? How did this settlement affect their lives?
Well, they were incredibly happy and grateful, not only at the settlement of $8 million, but also the fact that they didn't have to go to trial and talk about the loss of losing their father, her husband. The person that was killed was an incredible man, a really giving guy, and had an really positive impact on the local community. And, of course, his children and his wife loved him dearly, right? So it was just a very sad, sad case.
Wow. DUI accidents in general terms, you call them the only 100% preventable types of accidents. Right? We could stop this, and yet it goes on and on year after year, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but there are competing views on how to make that happen, and it's going to take more than just making the laws more severe. I think you've got to address it from a treatment side angle. Alcoholism is a disease, and also allow people the incentive and to give them the motivation to get help too. I don't think our system does that right now.
What could we do better?
I think more education, of course, and where that education would come from, whether it's taking your driver's license test or renewing your license every few years. That, and I think just from a community standpoint, whether it's seeing more TV commercials and more public service announcements on it, I think there's been a lot of improvement compared to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but more can be done to prevent it for sure.
Tell me about your relationship with MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. This goes back a ways.
Yeah, so we've been involved with MAD for, I want to say, 15, 20 years at least. We've participated in their donating efforts. We attend their MAD Walkathon every year, and I think we've raised lots of money for MAD over the years.
Before MAD, I can remember as a child, all of a sudden MAD sort of came into being, and we're raising this awareness that this thing happens year after year on our highways from coast to coast, and it just gets pushed aside. And it feels like they were the first to raise their hands and say, this is stoppable. We can do something about this. And I think the world's a better place since they started raising that awareness.
Oh, absolutely. I think MAD has probably been the single biggest reason why there's been more awareness today compared to 20, 30, 40 years ago, for sure. Absolutely. I remember in my early days when I was working as a King County prosecutor that MAD would show up on sentencing, which was unusual. And want to talk to the judge during sentencing about the problems of driving under the influence. And my hat goes off to Matt. That's why we're such a strong supporter of that organization and all of the good that they've done over the years.
Or maybe one day it'll be your last case involving alcohol on the roads and highways of the state of Washington. We can hope for that, right?
Yeah, let's hope.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. I'm Eric Johnson. This is, of course, Chris Davis. This is the True Claims Podcast. And until next time, we'll see you later. Eric Johnson here. I spent the last 30 years reporting on what you need to know, and now I've got something I think everyone could use. The Washington Accident Book Series offers a free legal guidebook on everything from car crashes to dog bites, so that you know what to expect after any kind of accident. Know your rights and how to avoid common mistakes after an accident by getting your free copy at WashingtonAccidentBooks.com.